more you have, the more you stand to lose. So go ahead and play. Just don't forget, the game is fixed.
Yes, that's an actual line from the actual advert for Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. And it means so much. It is a very, very loaded line, because you think about, what does the game being fixed mean, right? Well, first of all, it means the game is fixed. It means the game is now good. It means the game is playable. It's, you know, it's better than ever, all those things. But it is also an admission of guilt, because in order to be fixed, it has to be broken in the first place. They didn't say the game is better. They didn't say the game is improved. They said the game is fixed. That line made me think of what the Cyberpunk cinematic director said on Twitter a while ago. He said, "I wouldn't retroactively change the past. The game had a lot of problems. I think the overall mood, story, characters, art direction, gameplay, and music were solid from the start, but bugged and undercooked or not working. We had to fix it, and that's what we did. That's the story." He said that in response to a meme post just saying Cyberpunk is good actually, always has been. And that's a narrative that I think no one at CDPR outside of maybe management would like. In my eyes, I think the truth always comes to fruition, right? The truth always finds a way to manifest itself. And if you want the truth to come to light about things you're reading online, check out today's sponsor.
Ground.news, an app and website that puts power in your hands, and with my link, you'll get 30% off their Vantage plan. Now what they do is they ingest over 50,000 articles a day. They organize them by story. They break down how many sources are reporting on each topic, along with political bias and ownership. And that actually lets you quickly compare the headlines and the different outlets to see what is actually going on out there. I'm in the States right now, so it's been fun seeing what's up there. Also, the breaking story of the writer's strike. It's actually coming to seemingly a bit of an end. Now, this was mostly covered by the center, largely covered by the left, and barely covered by the right. Even though that's news, it's obviously relevant to all of us, and to really dive into that, their feature Blind Spot will show you stories from outside your political norms, helping you, of course, be better informed. And you can get all this, the app on your phone, on desktop, via an email newsletter. They just help keep you informed and to fight the bias of headlines that spread virally over social media and just confuse all of us. So if that sounds good to you, go to ground.news/Bellular. Over there, they're offering our viewers a 30% off discount on the Vantage subscription. It's an awesome service, even just being able to quickly glance read through all the stories, compare the headlines, see the summaries of what's going on. It's just a really damn powerful tool. So you can check out my code down below. With that said, let's roll.
They're not trying to hide what they did. They know that they made a mistake. They know that their controversial launch, they know that their game not working at all, their game being half-cooked, even after 10 years of work. They know that the deceptive marketing around the console versions, they know that the review practices that were outright unethical, they know all of those happened. And obviously those were largely the fault of management and the upper echelon at CD Projekt Red, and not the fault of the devs. But they're all responsible for the product, and their name is on that product. So I think it's telling of who we're dealing with that their response to this is to say, the game is fixed. And I think a big question is that blustering? Is that the game is fixed now, we promise, come buy it, here's our marketing wave, please, we're running out of money? Or is this a genuine, listen, we've righted our wrongs, here's our apology, not an outright apology, you know, not groveling at our feet, but, you know, the token of, yeah, we're sorry about that, can we make things right, can things go back to normal now? And I think that's happened, because here's from PC Gamer, just whenever the patch went live. I know someone told you it was time to play 2077 every time I got a patch, but for real, it's time now. And I think that's a sentiment a lot of people have seen, because you look here, and obviously 26th September, that's the actual launch date of Phantom Liberty. That's up at 230,000. But you see here, this little bit, that was 100,000 players going, or about 80, 90,000 players going, I'll give it a try. And they did. And they continued to. And that kept growing. So before the expansion launched, they hit about 160, 170,000 peak players, which is obviously, you know, nothing compared to their 1 million peak when it was the big game of the talk. But to get a fifth of that back is impressive. You see here, it's up to 5th in the most played games of Steam for that period of time. But that's not just returning players coming back to play the game they bought, like you might expect. Steam's global top 3 at this point was actually all Cyberpunk. It was the game itself been sold separately, it was the DLC been sold separately, and it was the bundle containing all 2 of them together. And those were the top 3. So this is basically the second launch of Cyberpunk 2077. And the question is, the bad version got 1 million players? Is this one good? And the resounding answer is Yes. The reception has been extremely positive across basically all fronts, right? You see people here with, here's the Gorilla Arms 2.0, holy shit. And this is just, here's some gameplay revamps. We have changed core parts of this game to literally make it more fun. This guy is running around beating the ever-loving shit out of someone with these, like, enhanced, obviously, arms. That's one of the fantasies of gameplay in Cyberpunk. That is, what if I just go around smashing heads together? That's one of the fantasies, and now it's possible. And then look at this, right? The air dash ability with the reinforced tendons, you basically bunny hop through Night City. That's the kind of thing that if you're making a build in an RPG, if you're playing around with stuff, that's the stuff people really like to do. That's the fantasy, that's the... Maybe it's not like super tied to the narrative, but when people play their game, they want to do stuff like this. And then you've even got, you know, bullet deflection with the katana. Does that make a lot of sense? No. Is that cool as shit? Yes. That's what people always wanted to do when you think, you know, you're a cyberpunk samurai. What are you going to do? Of course you're going to be deflecting bullets. Of course you're going to turn this, like, game that was kind of overpowered into, like, range stuff where melee was kind of weak or a little weird, and then give them strength that way. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that I'm sure the developers wanted in its initial release, but couldn't get done in time because of pressure from above or whatever problems were going on. Another one of the problems with the game was that people were very much, like, expecting a little bit more of a sandbox, right? And one of the best parts of a sandbox is whenever you kind of break things and you act the bad guy, you play the bad guy, you play the villain, you play the overpowered, like, crazy cyborg who's going on wrecking stuff. And in this clip here, it's the SWAT style max tactical. And this is just someone's going to go and cause a rampage. Let's see how the world responds. And a responsive world is part of an open world game, part of an RPG, part of a, like, the sim stuff. And they've nailed that finally. It also helps that it's absolutely beautiful, right? They've rebuilt the game's progression, they've rebuilt the combat, and now, all of the narrative stuff, obviously I said at the top of this, the cinematic director was saying the mood, story, characters, art direction, music and stuff were all good from the start. With a little bit of tweaking and with the game around it, with the scaffolding of the game design supporting it and being stronger and being more fun, now people are more happy to engage with it and enjoy it. And that's part of why I actually ended up, like, buying this now, despite it not really been on my radar for a game, because I don't really have time to play big RPGs anymore. I'm trying to branch out and play a lot more hundreds of hours of Metroidvania, because that's my jam. I can't stop it. But I bought it because people were talking to me about the vibes. People were talking to me about how good Cyberpunk actually was at the time for being like this not like extremely philosophical, but like this decently thoughtful experience into the transhumanism of Cyberpunk, into the themes of that world, into that dystopia, into what Cyberpunk actually is. And that was the thing people were excited for in the first place. Obviously people obviously love the gameplay parts of that RPG side, but an awful lot of it was, this is something new and different and cool, and it's from CDPR, who are unapologetically strong at this. But now that's there, you can enjoy it without any caveats. You don't have to play a bad game to get the good stuff. Now you get both. And there's so much more of it too. And I'll tell you in a bit the real reason I actually bought Phantom Liberty. So here's Pavel Sasko, right? He's the quest director for Phantom Liberty. And this was their one chance. This was the only expansion for the game. This was them saying, listen, we can never have a first impression again with Cyberpunk 2077. All we can do is fix it. But where we can give you a new first impression is with the expansion launch. And look at that, 100% critic recommendation. 90 top critic average. Some of it might be positive from bleeding into like the Cyberpunk story and stuff, but like, you know, the meta narrative of CDPR in the game. But Pavel said, I really wanted to make you all proud, especially those who are with us for the good and the bad. I hope you feel it was worth the trust this one more time, and I wish you a fucking blast with Phantom Liberty. Like, here's the story in 2 images, right? Phantom Liberty, good across the board. Cyberpunk, not very good. And please note, significant disparities in performance. That's not what you want to see. So now that's gone. I will say, SkillUp did point out a couple of things about the review saying that CDPR said only B-roll only, not your own footage, which is, I mean, he put it best. It's bullshit, but CDPR have nothing to hide. Phantom Liberty is fantastic. Now, here's the reason I went and bought Phantom Liberty, because I'm a big fan of RPGs, and especially the guys who like work at RPG site, they are some of the most solid dudes that I've ever actually seen post stuff online, right? And Alex Donaldson gave it 10 out of 10. Over in Phantom Liberty, new and old mechanics are given the chance to shine. The expansion is the most glorious of things, a game confidently leaning into its strengths and sometimes delighting in subverting expectations with that knowledge. Another thing he said about it was, as far as an expansion goes, it's one of the all-time greats. And if that's not an apology for destroying your expectations, if that's not an apology for misleading you in all those cases, I don't know what is. Now, obviously, you know, developers weren't the ones who made the mistakes. It was the the management, was the production, the executive level who made those mistakes. But as a whole, they've come together and they've apologized by saying, we should have made a good game. We're sorry about that. Here's our good game now. But to continue with some other stuff, the result is an expansion that reflects, refracts, and enriches the game around it. Dogtown's environmental design is one of the most impressive aspects of this expansion. Every structure in Dogtown is haunted by the ghost of a promising future deferred by economic blight and the pernicious whims of thieves, murderers turned power brokers, and politicians. Even an 87 from PC Gamer kind of feels low in comparison here, but he says CD Projekt can hang with the big dogs when it comes to cinematic storytelling, with the quality of writing and world building that I prefer to the likes of Sony's vaunted first party lineup. And that's it, right? That's it. People want really high quality games, but a lot of really high quality games comes at the cost of being production friendly, or it comes at the cost of being very broad, very not niche, right? Because if you have a game that costs however many hundreds of millions of dollars, you need to guarantee the sales, which means you need to broaden your horizons. I didn't mean horizon as a pun, but let's pretend I did. You need something that is, you need something that is widely marketable. And Cyberpunk is in a little bit of a way, but it's mostly like, it's so unapologetic thematically. It's not the kind of game just anyone picks up. It has teeth, it has edge, it has all the things that people want out of video games. Especially now that all of the gameplay changes have happened and all of that like creativity and freedom and RPG stuff is actually there finally. You can see that this is what it should have been all along. And now that this is what we're actually getting, it's genuinely fantastic. Here's some insights from Twitter that I always particularly enjoy. All the Cyberpunk DLC reviews seem really positive, which is not surprising because huge immersive RPGs with aimless main campaigns and a handful of great side quests often have really good DLC. That's when you're legally allowed to make something interesting. And that is mostly because it's the same with a lot of DLC and the same with some sequels, right? Where the DLCs are often, we can take every lesson we learned making this game, this game that's like pretty good, it's pretty good, whatever, but it's big and we have to make it. We have to learn how we're making it while we're making it. But when you start the DLC, you've already learned everything. You already know, you go, I could have done every single thing better there. I could have done, this better, this better, this better. Now I've got a chance. And now we have, I'm sure they still add here, but less technical questions. We have more experienced implementation. We have a much tighter scope. And that leads to, I think, a combination of what people loved about expansion packs in the past and DLC in the past. Big games are great. Small games are great. Why can we not have both in the same product? And the answer here is they did it. So this is the end of Cyberpunk 2077. This is a final note on what I think was a horrible, horrible story for CD Projekt Red, obviously their fault, and for us as consumers. I think a lot of people were probably burned by the years and years and years of excitement, and that ultimately being like a rug pull from underneath you. And there's a lot that's already been said, but I'm more than happy to see at least this big company, CDPR, learn from their mistakes. And you can argue that they learned from their mistakes because it's necessary, because if you learn from your mistakes, or if you just make the same mistake again, then your company dies because reputation is value and you've lost your value. But I think it's actually important to think to keep in mind that an apology, cynical or otherwise, is still an apology. And as far as meeting the needs of their consumers by releasing Phantom Liberty, by fixing Cyberpunk 2077, that they've earned back trust. Maybe not all of it. Maybe they'll never get it all back, but in a way that's different to the recent Unity story, right? Because the recent story of Unity was that they showed their true colors and everyone went, we will never trust you again no matter what you do. This is a case where they kind of proved, or at least they mostly proved, this was a mistake and we will not make it again. So I'm very much looking forward to getting into Phantom Liberty because I'm a big fan of these kinds of stories. I'm a big fan of game design being perfect. And it sounds to me, especially if I look back at RPG sets 10 out of 10, it looks like Phantom Liberty is the perfect send-off for an unfortunate beginning. With that was the Engoodening of Cyberpunk 2077. Not as clear-cut a story as No Man's Sky's Engoodening, but one that leaves me feeling happy and excited to play a game all the same. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with more news.